can attribute much of my learning to my parents, but not in the way you might think. Born into a blue-collar family who so graciously chose a pricey town to live in for the betterment of their future children, I rarely saw my parents. My father worked nights and my mother worked second shift, so I was passed around from relatives to family friends to babysitters to daycares until my parents deemed me mature enough to stay home alone at the ripe old age of 7. I was a completely independent child. I could read at the age of 3. I could cook at the age of 6. I knew how to use the VCR as a toddler and would walk 3 miles to the town library to check out books starting at 7. Sound familiar? My life could be akin to Matilda's, with the exception that my parents weren't terrible people and I didn't have mind powers. I lost myself in books. We didn't have cable, and computers were only just starting to make their way into homes. My closest friends were 15 to 20 minutes away, rural living at its finest. So it was what I did. My elementary school fostered this love. Back then, they could have been considered rather radical. We were allowed to listen to Korn during free time, spent much of our day on acting, drawing, and singing, and we read a lot. In 4th grade, our read-aloud book was Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, and it is a series that I still cherish. I talk to others I work alongside and read news stories about districts that ban such books, and I think of how lucky I was to grow up where I did. When I was 9 years old, my sister was born, and if I wasn't already wise beyond my years from having to take care of myself, this event made me more so. I became my mother. I stayed home from school when my sister was sick so my parents could work. I went to her school functions so she had someone there to cheer her on. I even accompanied my mother to my parent-teacher conferences so I could use that knowledge to help her do better in school. My maturity skyrocketed. I craved not the attention and conversation of my peers, but that of my teachers. I formed many lifelong relationships, and much of this influenced my becoming a teacher. Many may think that growing up in such a small town would mean we were sheltered, but my teachers took every opportunity to provide us with as many learning experiences as possible, many of which shaped me into who I am today. When I started showing interest in becoming a teacher, I was in 5th grade. My teacher at the time, Mrs. Pote, noticed this desire and would block out time in the morning to allow me to visit other classrooms and aid the teachers. From then on, I grasped at these opportunities and continued taking advantage of them throughout my school career. In high school, I had the opportunity to travel outside of the country not once, but twice. When I was in 10th grade, I went on a service learning trip to Costa Rica, and in 12th grade, I took one to Peru. This was a leap for me. I was the kind of person who went to school and went home. While I spent a lot of time on my own in my childhood, there was something different about jet setting out of the country for a week. I cried a lot. I was homesick. I struggled. But my teachers were amazing. They pushed me. They made me do things outside of my comfort zone on these trips, and I am grateful. It made me resilient, which I certainly needed moving forward in life. The effortless relationships I formed with most of my teachers have been the most influential in my learning. From my grade school teachers throughout college and beyond, these relationships have strengthened my maturity, fostered my resilience, and for the first time, influenced the confidence in myself to do great things. Much of this came into play in college, as I struggled to gain the most out of an education program that was failing me in many respects. The secondary education program was new, and because of this, underprepared. In order to gain the amount of experience I desired, I needed to advocate for myself and others. I became a force to be reckoned with within the department. Sometimes it felt like I had hit a wall, that I wasn't going to get the education I deserved. The obstacles were endless. And it turned into my biggest learning opportunity thus far. I learned not to stop until I was satisfied. I learned to work with people I hated, and I don't throw around the word hate very often. I dove into a teaching experience from hell and came out a better person and still wanting to teach, which was assuring as I knew I had picked the right career path. Over the past 8 years since getting my bachelor's, I have gained the ability to adapt, think on my feet, and continue to push forward, plowing through obstacles. I have my master's. It has been difficult, but rewarding. Everything's falling into place, and I look back on my relationships that taught me so much with joy, and I look forward to continuing to develop strong relationships with my colleagues in order to further